Well, when beginning to work with a student with CVI, we like to start with a comprehensive assessment. It's key that there's an assessment that we use to figure out all the different characteristics of CVI, and that we know specifically how how our students' vision is affected in those characteristics. So, for example, some students need light a certain way, whether it's backlit or shine onto the object. Some students use objects. Some students are ready for two-dimensional, but it might be that they are not ready for a drawing or an icon, but they actually need a real picture of that object. And then also, we're always looking out for complexity, whether it's the environment or the picture they're looking at or the object they're looking at, those kind of things. And then we also would want to start where we have made sure that we've talked to parents and the classroom team members and the student themselves if they are able to communicate with us, to just know where they're at, what is it they're looking at, not looking at home, and where at home in different environments do they land within the characteristics of CVI. So it really is important that we do a multidisciplinary approach when we're first starting with these students, so we understand right where they're at.
When I'm starting to work with a student as a speech-language pathologist, I, of course, also would use a comprehensive assessment, but I also am going to do a lot of observations of how the student is currently communicating. So, do they have any words or vocalizations? Are they using their facial expressions or body language? Do they have a yes, no, a finger point? I'm starting to think about how they're communicating, as well as any access method that we might need to start looking at for augmentative and alternative communication. Similar to what you said, always working in a multidisciplinary team, especially if our students have more of those complex needs. After we would do assessment and those observations, I am always going to want to start trialing a tool that meets the needs of what I'm seeing but is robust as possible. And I think that's where it starts to get a little bit tricky with our students with CVI, because I always want to have the most robust tool. So I'm looking for how much vocabulary I can offer to a student at the beginning. And of course, I'm then trying to start teaching them that tool, providing wait time, and looking for any success or challenges that we see once we start AAC. What I would want other professionals to know who are just starting to work with either AAC or students with CVI, first of all, is that we're all multimodal communicators. We all use various forms of communication. And so even when we're introducing AAC, we want to still honor all forms of communication. So if a student is starting to use any tool or strategy that we put in front of them, but they continue to use facial expressions or gestures, we still are going to honor those. The other thing I think is really important for people to understand is that when we're introducing new tools, we as the adults need to model those tools for the student and give them a lot of time to learn that tool. This whole process is going to take time. The last thing I think for me is that we all should be working together. It takes a team of people working together and bringing their unique knowledge, and that includes the student and their family members and caregivers.
So when beginning your journey of working with students with CVI, one of the most important things to remember is that just because you know one student with CVI does not mean you know another student. The saying goes, once you meet one student with CVI, you've only met one student with CVI. Everything is extremely individualized. And so another part would be, it's important to go back to that assessment, really look at each characteristic of CVI that your student is showing, making sure that you're addressing it when using AAC. It's really important to be flexible and to keep an open mind and really be willing to modify whatever you see. And finally, I know that with SLPs, you like to give as many opportunities as possible, but sometimes for CVI, less is more. If you have too much going on at one time, then there's a lot of clutter, and whether it's the environment or visual clutter, and then your student is not going to be open to using their tools.
Now, understanding CVI more, when I would work with a student, I would really want to look at how they're interacting with their environment. Are they using their auditory sense, their tactile sense, or their vision when they're interacting? And I would want to try to match their AAC to whatever sense they're using most of the time. So if they are, if auditory is a strength, then working with auditory scanning with the most robust system that I can for that student. So that's definitely a new understanding for me. I think that something else I would understand now is having a multimodal option for that student if their vision changes throughout the day. So if they are a student who is using a device or a communication board visually, if their vision fatigues, I need to have an option for them to fall back on throughout the day if that vision changes or fatigues. So that's another new approach I would take now.
So what I have learned is that at first it felt like I was always fighting with SLPs why aren't they understanding? Why aren't SLPs understanding this is what they need visually? But understanding now that your goal is to be robust and rich in as many options as possible. So now I feel like I would be able to approach SLPs in a better way to help them feel more comfortable with, okay, yes, we're trying to do things robust and rich, but it has to be done in a specific way so that way we're not overwhelming their vision. And then, like you said, make sure we have the backup system for when their vision does shut down. And then again, understanding that we need a lot of balance between the two of us and to be very flexible when we work together.